So let's figure out how we can optimize every golf club in your bag, right? To where we're hitting our wedges, the purest, the most flighted, penetrating flight like a dart landing next to the pin. And then we can turn around on the next tee box and smoke a driver, high, long, carry with low spin, right? It's something that I see is so often, it's hard to do, right? I ask a lot of my students, what's your favorite club in the bag? And they say, oh, it's my 7-iron. If I had all my clubs like my 7-iron, I'd be the greatest golfer ever. But you got to remember, your most important clubs are typically, there's 3 of them, right? We know it's the putter, because that's like 44% of golf, right? But then it's usually our sand wedge or our wedges, right? Whichever is your favorite wedge, and then it's our driver. Those are literally the ones that are called our scoring clubs. Those 3 make up the majority of how you're going to shave strokes and become a better golfer. And just in general, if you think of it, sand wedges on this end of the spectrum, drivers over here, if you can hit these 2 well, you'll do well with everything in between. When we keep hitting that 7-iron and that 6-iron, we're not really getting to this end of the spectrum, okay? And what I'm talking about here is I've got these launch conditions for, I've got LPGA up for average, right? These are the TrackMan launch conditions of how they strike their golf balls, or how are they so good with the driver? How are they so good with their sand wedge, their pitching wedge, their 7-iron? This gives us a little glimpse into what they're actually doing. I think you'll find it very, very eye-opening. You notice with the pitching wedge down here, a pitching wedge typically has 46 degrees of loft, okay? When they hit their pitching wedge, their launch angle actually takes off at about a 26-degree angle. So in effect, they're taking that 46-degree pitching wedge and they're launching it almost 20 degrees lower, what I call negative loft. They're de-lofting it that much, okay? So it's important in terms of how they release the club. I'm going to go into detail on how that happens. Now, the other end of the spectrum is their driver, okay? Their launch angle with their driver is up there at 13.2 degrees, which if you've ever watched the LPGA in person, that ball is up pretty high. It looks like it's a 40-degree angle when you're watching a driver. It's not, it's 13, but it's quite a high launch, especially by the time it gets out to that apex and just stays up there for a long time. Now, your average loft on the LPGA is around 9 degrees. So now they're positive lofting, right? Taking their driver and they're adding loft in order to hit that trajectory and carry the ball that far with low spin. So how do we do that, right? A lot of it's in our trail hand. I've got this little punching bag glove to show you what I'm talking about. What they're able to do with their trail hand, and you'll see, right? Take a look at this video here of Tiger Woods practicing it too, right? When that's the feel that he needs at that time to hit that club. So they're taking their trail hand with their wedges and their short irons, and they're bringing it down like this, okay? You can see what's happening here, right? I've got a lot of bend into my trail wrist, and I'm keeping that for longer as I get down into impact. Now, it doesn't mean that the club doesn't release. It just releases out here. When I get to impact, I'm in this position, okay? When they get to their driver, right, obviously their stance is wider, first of all. Their head's more behind the golf ball. They're letting it line up like this more. You see where that's happening right there? That's allowing the shaft to flex and kick, and it's adding more loft to the club, and it's turning that 9-degree driver, and it's putting it up there in the air so we can really get some good enhanced carry. So when you take your clubs out, right, if I show you with a wedge first, right, let's just say here's my wedge ball position, right, say I'm in the center of my stance. Typically your best players at impact, right, when we look at them, they've got about 10 to 12 degrees of shaft lean. So notice what that's doing with my trail hand. So I want you to just slowly practice first, going from setup to impact, setup to impact. Now I'm turning and shifting slightly, but the biggest example is I'm just pushing the grip end of the shaft forward, and I'm keeping this bend in my trail wrist. Some people focus on this lead wrist and kind of having it like this. I like to focus on my trail wrist. I feel like most, you know, that's our dominant side. I like to focus there more. It usually tends to make sense and get the results to happen quicker. So, boom, there's my 10 to 12 degrees of shaft lean. Now my pitching wedge here at address is more like a 9-iron. So if you're one of those ones with a little bit of scoopy high ball flight, this is definitely right up your alley. We're going to start hitting it at least a club farther just because I'm learning how to go from setup, boom, down into impact. And then we would obviously hit some shots. You can start here, go to impact, knock it out there, and really get a good sense of having that trail wrist bent, which is going to keep you down for a long time through the golf shot. Going to help you play through the wind if you're in a place where it gets windy from time to time. It's going to help your compression, help you take divots, right? Just all in all, make you a better iron player, all right? So that's that end of the spectrum, what we're doing with the right hand. Now, when we go to getting our driver out, right, you'll see something different start to occur, okay? So that's part of why we make the setup changes. While I'm inside my lead heel, I widen my right foot. My head is more behind the golf ball, right? Which we all know at address. So here I'm set up with driver. And now when I get to driver impact, I want to start to kick the shaft. Can you see that in slow motion there? The shaft is actually trying to bend like this, okay? That's why we pay $500, $600 for these darn shafts. We want to learn to use them. So I'm actually releasing the club earlier as I get to impact, and I'm actually putting a little force on my hands that gets the head and the shaft to kick, okay? When that shaft kicks in that fashion, it adds loft to the head. So this, say, 9-degree driver, when it kicks like this, I've added a couple more degrees, which is part of how they get that positive launch, right? That's also a big part of how we get to hitting up on the golf ball. We obviously can't hit up on a driver if we release it the same way, right? So often, so many students come in and they say, you know what, I hit my driver great, I can't hit a wedge to save my life, right? I'm the worst wedge player, or vice versa. I hit my short irons and wedges great, I don't hit driver well at all. I don't hit it far, it spins too much, doesn't roll a lot, I feel like my buddies outdrive me. Usually you've got an issue with one of those two releases. Hey, it's your coach Zach Allen here, and when it comes to the golf swing, I've seen and tried it all. But nothing is proven as effective as the concept I'm about to share with you now. It is the single most powerful piece of golfing advice I've ever come across. In fact, I would go so far as to call it a magic move. Since I don't have the time in this short video, I've put together a 3-part web class where I teach you exactly how to put it to use in your game. Nothing held back. I call it my Magic Move Training Series, and you can get the entire thing free of charge by clicking the link in the description below. You won't find these videos anywhere else, so go ahead, click the link right now, and I'll send you the first session right away. Okay, let's go ahead and get back to that lesson. So all I would do when you get out next time on the driving range, tee a couple balls up, and now just rehearse impact from here. You notice when I get to impact with my driver, my hands barely go forward at all, and then take a couple easy swings where you just swing down and stop. And feel yourself kind of kick that shaft, right? It's kind of like a dog wagging his tail. You feel like you're kind of kicking the head off the end of the shaft right at the very bottom. That gives us a little extra snap, and it gives us definitely that feeling of positive launch. As you get better with both of these, go back and forth. You should be able to, right after you do that, pick up your wedge and then create this impact, right? Handle forward, right wrist bent, nice divot, compression, boom, back to my driver, set up at address, get into a good driver position, kick the shaft there, see a nice positive launch with low spin, and we're really becoming a complete player at that point, right? But just totally recognize we don't want to be a one-hit wonder. We want to go on both ends of the spectrum. Once we get those taken care of, we can start to do everything in between, in the middle, right? If you like this video and you believe it's going to help you, here's another good video that is also along these same lines. That'll give you a better sense of how to strike the ball better with these clubs. Go out there and give it your shot next time. See if it doesn't help you to hit those clubs better, right? Those all-important scoring clubs.